Wise for Africa Director Advocate Brenda Madumise-Pajibo is now joining us to weigh in on the release of Paralympian and convicted murderer Oscar Pistorius. Thank you so much for your time this afternoon, Advocate. Now, South Africans are divided in terms of, Pistorius being released on parole after just completing a portion of his sentence. What's your reaction to this development?
Good afternoon, Nachi, and thanks for having me. Listen, I think we will be divided because depending on which side of the fence you are, if you are with Reeva and many other victims and survivors of gender violence, is that you want those convicted of these crimes to pay their price to society and not be released on parole and serve the full sentence, right? And those who believe in someone being given parole will always claim and be okay with the fact that he's been released on bail, because truly speaking, he's entitled to that bail. In terms of the Correctional Services Act and the parole board itself, he has met certain conditions. He was a model citizen in prison. He behaved okay in prison, so he was eligible for that parole. What should happen and what you should be advocating for is that in cases like these, when there is brutality, where there is viciousness, where there is abuse to this extent, is that those who are convicted of these crimes should not be eligible for parole. Then I think we'll have a different understanding and an appreciation of the crimes that are committed, that are heinous by these individuals. Because then, after 10 years, he knew that he's eligible for parole. That's why he fought hard to ensure that the state does not forget that he's eligible for parole. What we have not seen from Oscar is whether he's remorseful for his actions and how he's going to atone for his actions. Because what we have seen all along is on Oscar, who has been belligerent and not forthcoming on what he did on that fateful night on the 14th of February in the year that 11 years ago. And for me, until such time that Oscar does that and takes this entire country into confidence, this parole will be meaningless.
And, as part of his parole, just talking to your point earlier on in terms of remorse, I mean, he has to attend, programs on gender-based violence when he is, released on parole, and he has to continue therapy sessions on anger management. I mean, in prison, he was also part of the restorative justice program, behind bars. How likely is he then, just given what you've said, particularly because of the kind of crime this is he then and Reeva's family, in this case, Reeva's mom, likely to reconcile, just given the fact that, Reeva's mom, June, in her statement said that she does not think that Oscar has been rehabilitated?
And that is instructive what Reeva's mother is saying, right? Because remember, they would have been given the opportunity to say something during the parole hearing, right? And I would be interested to hear what Oscar had to say to Reeva's parents and what Reeva's parents had to say to Oscar. So if the mother is already saying to you she does not think that's rehabilitated, that should be a light bulb, and we need to be mindful and consider what she's saying. Because his demeanor throughout his case, right, even afterwards, his disposition throughout this case, it's of someone who just gave us this don't care attitude and not showing any remorse whatsoever. So if Oscar is rehabilitated, and in fact, we are saying that part of the conditions is for him to attend programs that are gender-based violence programs and to conduct himself in a particular way. Are these convicted individuals doing these things because they just want to be out of prison? Remember, with parole, it's still part of the sentencing. It's just that he's going to serve his sentence out of the prison facility, right? Now, did he become a model citizen in prison because he was looking forward to ensuring that he is released once he has served the minimum sentence, which is the 10 years, the 11 years that he served? So I think, for me, is at the individual level, and Oscar Pistorius when he walks out of that prison tomorrow, he needs to reckon with himself and be truthful to himself and be honest with himself whether he deserves to be out on parole or not.
How important is it, for Reeva Steenkamp's family, that one of Oscar's parole conditions, is that he should not conduct any interviews with the media? How important is that? Because like you've said, these cases, particularly ones that are so violent in nature, they're exceptionally difficult for the victim's family.
Absolutely. I think that's a good thing that he has been barred from talking to the media. And what it helps us with is that Oscar will not be doing a tell-all book because, when you start to do media interviews, then you're getting approaches to do a live television. We now start to see you doing, interviews with different people, and then there's a book in the making. So I think I am appreciative of the fact that he is barred from engaging, because once you allow him to do that, you start to sanitize him and glorify him. And instead of dealing with what he has done and reckoning with his actions. And so for a while, he needs to stay out so that the family does not have to see his face all the time, him gloating and trying to explain himself when he failed to explain himself to them, and to give them the comfort of at least admitting on what he did on that day. I mean, Oscar has not been truthful with all of us to tell us exactly what happened to Reeva on that day. He had been, running away, diving and ducking and not being honest and truthful. So he has to, as I say, at an individual level, he has to reckon with that. It must be a nightmare, a release of parole that he has to contend with on a daily basis, that he has to atone for his actions.
And it is perhaps that point that you make that why it's so difficult for South Africans to then, choose a side. But I want to go back, Advocate, to an earlier point that you made, in terms of in such instances, perhaps we should consider not having, parole be given in cases like GBVF. But then my question is, should victims of crime, especially with gender-based violence and femicide, take then a dominant role when determining parole? Should that then be something that is considered in as far as, just leaving it to government or authorities to make that decision?
So Unathi, I think, and I've said this many a times, we need to ask ourselves as a society, as a country, why we punish for these crimes, right? Remember, these crimes are committed and the state steps in on your behalf. So Reeva is being spoken to and for by the state at the moment, right? Because she can't speak for herself. So what is the purpose of punishment? Do we punish because we want to deter people from committing the crimes, so that once you know that you can go for 25 years, you get scared and you don't want to commit? Do we punish because we want to reform you, so that you come out as a model citizen and you refrain from behaving in a bad manner and bad way? Do we punish because we are retributive, is an eye for an eye, because you have done something that is so brutal and ugly to society that we want to be retributive and punish you and lock the prison door and lose the key, right? Once we understand why we punish, and if we are punishing because we want to a punishment to serve as a deterrent, then we need to know what kind of behavior, when you come out of that prison, what kind of a model citizen are you now, based on when you went in, you were this individual. When you come out, you are changed because you have atoned for your actions, right? Because at the moment, and I think for transparency purposes and for what we stand for as a country on accountability and transparency, we need to know what Oscar's application on parole, why he believed that he should be paroled. What did he do different that warranted the parole board to grant him the parole? And what is Oscar going to do different once he comes out, right? Because I would have wanted Oscar to serve the entire term of his sentence, right? And not be released on parole. And I think that's what we should be advocating for. Minimally, don't grant convicted perpetrators of gendered violence at minimum, don't grant them parole. Let them serve the full sentence, and in the interim, as they serve that sentence, get to see whether they are being rehabilitated or they're being reformative, and they will not commit such crimes again.
Advocate, thank you so much for your time on the show and, of course, your thoughts. That's anti-GBV organization Wise for Africa Director Advocate Brenda Madumise-Pajibo for us. All right, let's continue here now.